to the video. What were your thoughts from what you saw?
Very interesting.
It's very interesting. I found it was just a chance to really sit back and really think about how we have progressed in the world and what has become of progressed in one way, but have we digressed? I mean, you know, that is the question in terms of food. What are your thoughts on
I think what really hit home for me, and I've always known it, but I think as much as that they were far right,
yes,
every opinion, I think what they were saying about processed foods and the link to the meat companies and the link to making profit and the link to putting in things in the processed foods so that people would come and buy more really struck a chord with me.
it's frightening, isn't it?
It is.
And that they fund the research.
Yeah, and they're happy to put in more chemicals that addict you to the product.
I mean, I could think of at least 3 research papers I've read which has been funded by a company. But it's interesting, isn't it, what gets people to buy things. Probably the one thing about the film that I took away too, I mean, it sort of reinforces why I studied nutrition, but I think the messages are great, but you know, not to be too freaked out by some of the messages. It doesn't mean that you don't ever eat a grain of sugar ever in your diet again, because let's face it, from our ancestors we did have, what were the rations, sugar, flour, tea kind of thing. But the difference is from years ago, it was, if you made a biscuit, it was flour, sugar, butter or whatever, but now there's a lot of artificial additives in it, and unfortunately, like they said in the video, sometimes we replace the real whole foods for the diet modified, low fat, everything free, non-food kind of thing. So who found that as well, just that difference between eating real food and the sort of non-foods, being aware of it. But questions, probably kick off with the first question about juicing. So the question was, people talk about people talk about, you know, juicing as a detox, as a health benefit, but then there's another theory that suggests that when you do juice, you eliminate all the pulp, which is all the fibre. So, which way do you go? What thoughts do you have? To juice or not to juice?
Eat the pulp as well.
So you go shut, and then you go
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think it's the balance, because obviously you need the fibre, but there are times when you're probably not getting as much of the vegetable fibre. So if you're getting it in juice, you're still getting all the vitamins and the minerals and everything that's in it.
Correct, absolutely. So the main thing I say about juice is not to replace it as a meal or anything like that. Juicing is actually very beneficial. So the sort of juices you want are more of the vegetable juices. We know with fruit juice that's a lot of extra fructose. So I normally suggest that you eat a whole piece of fruit, but if you are using fruit in juice, no more than about half a serve. So if you've got a couple and you're doing celery, carrot, apple and ginger, you might put 1 apple in it and split it for 2. So I'd normally say if you do have juice, it is very good for you. You're getting all the antioxidants, we're going to talk about that in a minute, all the colours from different vegetables, you're getting all that in a glass, very, very concentrated. What you aren't getting is fibre, but like you said, Kathy, it's about balance. As long as you've got a good fibrous diet, a juice on the side is actually going to be a very good detox for the body, really, really good for you. And let's face it, in this day and age with pollution and the environment, sometimes I always question, are we getting enough vitamins and minerals from foods? So a juice would be absolutely fine, but I've had people who have lived on it, on juice a bit too much, and you just have to be a little bit careful. I basically say anything is poisonous. Too much of anything is not good, even water. Because what happens if you drink too much water, other than being stuck to the toilet on the toilet? It actually dilutes a lot of the salts in the blood, so your sodium levels can go too low. I've seen athletes who have drunk far too much water, so it can put the body out of whack. So too much of anything is not good, but certainly juice. I've got an old juice which I think I might have to dust the cobwebs off and bring out again, but certainly a juice a day, absolutely fine. It's a really, really good way of getting some more vitamins and minerals, phytochemicals in your diet.
Especially, I suppose, if you were to use it as a replacement for a snack that wasn't as healthy. So if you were coming home for 11 o'clock for a coffee and some cream biscuits, then obviously throwing a juice in instead is going to be a better option, isn't it?
Definitely.
Yeah.
actually, I've got, we'll talk about antioxidants, but all those different colours of fruit and vegetables represents different vitamins and minerals. So try to be creative and come up with all your own mocktails, and certainly like here, a morning tea snack is going to give you much more oomph. And what the video said, did you hear about, he was sort of saying that we're always in a feast but never in a famine, but also we're kind of nutritionally starving ourselves because we're not getting the nutrition that we need, which is a bit ironic, isn't it? So in terms of, replenishing your cells and getting the nutrition, that's another way of actually doing it. So I think one of the reasons why we show the video too is because you're halfway, you're doing really well. Sometimes it's not looking at huge changes. Maybe it's just sitting back and thinking, am I doing everything I possibly can? Or do I need to slow down and maybe make one change to improve the quality of my life or my diet, rather than having to make cutbacks all the time? It's not about weight or fitness per se, it's about what you're doing to get those benefits. What questions do you have about the video? Or I've sort of got through it and then made up our own summary in my head and created what I call a goal hierarchy, something that you can have a look at. And we can have a look at the things that you're already doing and maybe circling some of the things you could work on from now until the end of the challenge and maybe for the years to come. But if people have other questions or queries about the video that you saw?
I think the thing that I said to Gary was it was sort of like, you're either doing it this particular way, or you may not be doing anything. And it was sort of like stressing or everything should be organic. And I'm thinking, that sounds wonderful. So that's
sorry, kids, no milk. The cereal's going to pop down to jam.
Go off and get your milk from the farmer. Right.
I think the main message is, there might be things to the extreme, but then you can sort of go, that's all well and good. What's the concept behind it, and how does it stick? In my place in Claymer Downs 2012, it might be a little bit more realistic, and it might be go for more A2 milk rather than just the other milk, or it could be maybe I could go for a dairy alternative, or maybe I could, like Gary said, rather than having the beans and coffee, maybe we could try something different. Yeah, I think to get people to watch it, you've got to be a little extreme.
Yeah.
But
I think it was very American.
Yeah. I think we're very lucky in Australia. I mean, touch wood, in terms of high fructose and high corn syrups in foods, breads and things like that, it's not as bad. So I think we're pretty lucky in that regard. It's just a matter of being aware and mindful of the other foods. So in terms of organic, you don't have to be organic, but for some people they sometimes think, well, maybe I might try a week of just some organic fruit and veg and see if there's any difference. Because if we've got children, you've got a budget, and imagine going to a supermarket and buying fruit and vegetables for the whole week, you'd probably be spending a few $100s. So just to be aware and be realistic. Another option, something I did think of, was sometimes people think maybe we can start to grow our fruit and vegetables or grow herbs. That could be something to bring home to the family, so it means we are getting more of the natural unprocessed foods in our diet. I tried that last year, but all my herbs turned to seed because I've never known, so I have dried herbs on my balcony.
We've had the opposite. My whole patch is just waterlogged.
Oh wow, I feel the rain.
Just can't dry.
Wow. So, do you mind if I'll show you the goal hierarchy a lot, because I want you to think about, I've put quality fuel for a healthy body and healthy mind, and what I've done is put the main general goals across the top, and I've just put options, and I'll walk you through it. I've put increased good fats, increased plant foods from grains, some of the super grains, and I'll explain some of them and why they're pretty super, and legumes. Then we've got increased antioxidants. So that's increased more, but then I've also got reduce. So it might be reducing stimulants and non-foods. It could be mood and stress management. We touched on that last week. There's a couple of actually little extra techniques I can teach you. If you're finding, and particularly from that video, sometimes it's not also what you eat, it's how you eat in your response to the environment. We know with the stress hormone, that can actually increase your risk of disease too if you've got a lot of stress happening. But I've put other, maybe something else that you relate to that you can run in. So if you look at the good fats, we know the benefits of the good fats for cardiovascular health, and I think this video highlighted sometimes we go to the extreme of everything fat-free. Does anyone find that confusing sometimes? Everything's fat-free, but then they'll increase it with sugar or salt. So this is just looking at, it's not a low-fat diet, it's moderate fat. And we know if you have too much fat, well, if you don't burn it off, you gain weight. So there is a message out there. But the good fats are things like your oily fish. Now I've put the ones there that are really high in omega-3 fats, which is good not only for heart health, but the research is coming out now about reducing or preventing dementia. Now that doesn't mean if you eat fish, you're not going to lose your marbles, because it just means it will reduce your risk of dementia, but also mental health. They've actually looked at brains of people with schizophrenia, and people who have more omega-3 fats in their diet, they're more likely to have better mood, better mental health. So you can see even from the fish side of things, it might be, how are we going as a family with fish? Maybe we could have an extra fish meal. Cold pressed olive oil. I'm sure you've probably heard of that before. Have people heard the difference between just normal olive oil and cold pressed olive oil? One thing about cold pressed olive oil and a lot of different olive oils is they'll press the olives and extract the oil. That's cold press. It's actually the first squeezing of the olives. But a lot of olive oils are squeezed 2 or 3 more times. And so what you're actually getting is getting the dregs off the rest of the olive. And so it's actually not as powerful. So for the antioxidants, it's best to go with the first press of the olives. So if you can look for a cold pressed olive oil, that means that oil's been extracted for the first time. So you're actually going to retain all those antioxidants.
And do they have that on the, does it have it on the
It
label?
does.
So is it the real green, yellow colour?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you see the colour. So anything that's really colourful, when I see children talk about eating colours of the rainbow, you can have a lot of colour in your diet, it means you're getting a lot of antioxidants. So that was something I only learned about a year ago. I didn't realise. I was just buying extra virgin olive oil. Sometimes buying cold press, oh, that's all special, I buy that. I didn't really think of the difference. But cold press means it's the first press of the olives, so then you're going to still get those antioxidants. That's what you want. In the supermarkets, it's readily available. The same with olive oil. If you're looking at reducing aerosols in your diet, rather than doing the spray of olive oil, you could actually get, you know when you have one of the hairdressing spray bottles, you can actually decant it in one of those and spray it, or use a pastry brush. So you're not using aerosols. So that's one way of actually just keeping back to basics. I've put here as well your tree nuts. I've put a lot of nuts there because there's evidence out there that if you eat some of these tree nuts, at least 30 grams, a quarter of a cup most days, that can increase your health by, or heart health I should say. So people who have nuts in their diet are more likely to have better heart health. It also reduces your risk of other chronic diseases like cancer and diabetes. So who's a nut fan? Who's nuts about nuts? Who finds it hard to stop about yeah, so caution again. So the main message too is we talked about calories before, and that's always important. So it's also quantity dose that makes the poison, but then it's looking at the quality. And people find if they have good quality fats in their diet, they're less likely to be hungry. They're actually more likely to be satisfied.
So they do seem to be high in calories.
Sorry?
Like you'll have 5 nuts, and if you go and look at how many calories that is, it seems a lot.
It seems a lot, but sometimes if in the total day of your diet, it's good calories. So the trade-off is there's some calories you've used, but it's good quality. And sometimes it's a good experiment to look at when you do have those nuts, what's your eating intake for the rest of the day, and quite often it's actually less. Macadamias. I didn't. I must have forgotten. No, macadamias should be there too. Yeah, they're actually not a tree nut, but definitely macadamias. Macadamias, like you're saying, Elizabeth, they're actually quite high in fat, higher in fat than those other tree nuts. So then, in terms of a quarter of a cup, you just have a couple. But certainly macadamia nuts are very, very good for you. A lot of research coming out about the good benefits of macadamia oil and nuts, so definitely you could. Chocolate coated ones.
No.
Just that for Christmas.
Roasted and salted.
I know. You can get the roast. Have you seen the roasted almonds you can get in the supermarket? They're just dry roasted. They're really, really nice. They've got a lovely smoked nutty flavour. Obviously, they're nuts. Savoury flavour to them. Or you can roast them yourself in the oven. They're actually really, really nice. Putting a bit of chilli powder on it can actually make them as spicy too. And I've also put seeds. So you've got here your linseeds or flax seeds. So that's one of the seeds that have got some omega-3s in it, like fish. So if you don't eat fish, that's one way of getting omega-3. And I put all the other seeds, including chia seeds. So people have read and heard about chia. Also got omega-3 fats. And all of these seeds have got gummy fibres in them, viscous gummy fibre, so that's actually good for cholesterol reabsorption. So it's interesting, like you might choose one food for heart health, but it actually helps you with other health areas too. So any questions about the fats? Who's pretty knowledgeable about fats? I mean, that's just there and for a review, and sometimes it's worth looking at, do I get enough fat in my diet, or have I gone too extreme, not low fat? Or maybe I can replace one type of fat with something different. I've put increased plant foods from grains and legumes, so I call these the super grains. And it's interesting, years ago, things like oats and barley were considered poor man's food. But they always had it right, because it's one of the most richest foods you can put in your diet, but so cheap. So your oats and your barley are really high in soluble fibre, so that's good for cholesterol lowering, but also is a gentle type of fibre if you've got irritable bowel. It's actually really good fibre that people tolerate, so it's really good for digestive health. And I've put quinoa, I've also put rye and your buckwheat. So sometimes people think, well, if I've just got wheat bread in my diet, that's all well and good, but maybe one of my aims is to try a new grain and to replace some wheat with a different type of grain to get the added benefit. Who's cooked with quinoa before? It's lovely, isn't it?
It's not nice by itself, though.
No.
No, it's a bit plain.
It's a bit, it's like rice, you've got to jazz it up and put it with something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll just put dried fruit in it. Dried fruit in it.
Lovely.
It absorbs the flavour of what you're cooking.
It does, definitely.
that?
It absorbs the flavour of what you're cooking.
Yes.
I'll put it in the soup.
Great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I put it in soup too.
What's
And
it like?
have it for breakfast instead of porridge some morning.
Lovely. Yeah.
What's it like, GI wise? It is.
There's a new, there's a new pearl couscous.
Yeah, so
It is beautiful.
Gabrielle Gatte on the front.
Yeah, and it's long GI, it's beautiful.
It's
I
a-
cooked it last night.
I did too. It's interesting because when we do a cooking class, I was thinking, what foods will I introduce? And I saw the pearl couscous and was thinking,
Really good.
yeah,
I did a herby couscous, it's called.
it's lovely, isn't it?
But
it's
custom based,
though, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've used it as well. It's like a little pasta ball.
It tastes like risotto. You know, like the Italian risotto. It's like pasta. And the higher in protein the grain, the lower the GI. Because protein slows down your digestion. So that's why pasta's low GI, because they make it with egg. But also quinoa is high protein, therefore it's more low GI. So that's a good example of if you're putting in soup, sometimes people say, well, I'll take out the potato and put a wonder grain in there like barley or quinoa. Or, for breakfast, I'll have oats, that's really good, maybe I'll try quinoa instead. I think it's a really good way. Barley risotto. Sometimes people will swap just your arborio rice for barley. You have to cook it a lot longer, and I'd recommend you find a recipe that says barley risotto because it can be a bit hard on the teeth. So you need a really good recipe that shows you how to cook it. But you can actually make a barley risotto and get a wonder grain for the diet. And legumes, our trusty legumes, so lentils and soybeans and chickpeas and borlotti beans. Who's a fan of legumes? Yeah, pretty good. What do you do to jazz up
You
legumes?
make patties, so I make lentil patties and celery patties.
Yeah.
So easy to make, cottage cheese and others.
We just read one. Oh, yeah, great. So Margaret's got she uses legumes but also cottage cheese herbs to make patties. So it's actually a meal on a budget, but also very, very healthy. So it's interesting, these poor man foods are actually the rich foods that we need to eat more of.
We still make that lentil mash from the last time.
Yeah.
It's really
It's funny how you have a few classics that you just, that's good. Yeah. Does anyone sort of, out of those legumes think, I'd like to know a bit more about how to cook with them? Yeah, which one? All of them? Or?
All of them?
All of the above?
Yeah.
Well, when we do cooking, what I want to do is ask you guys, what foods would you like to get more ideas from? And it may be from a legume, it may be from quinoa, it may be from seaweed. I'm going really extreme. extreme, so challenge me. But, you know, that's what I'd like you to think about. You know, I've got some family favourites, but, you know, how can I reintroduce some more superfoods into the family, but there's something that everyone will like. So I'll get you to start thinking about it. But if you've got family favourite recipes, bring them in. It'd be great to see. The interesting thing is, I've got the next one is antioxidants, and how I've actually broken it up is the colours, because who's read a lot about antioxidants, and yeah, each of those colours represents different vitamins and minerals, and for some people they think, oh, I always have an orange and green veggie at night, perhaps I need to branch out and have something purple or blue or maybe red. So the more you get in your diet, the better for your health. And my golden rule with colour is that lunch and dinner to always have some sort of colour. So the first foods I've got there are green foods. So we know that broccoli has a lot of nutrition. I call it king of the trees. So whenever you hear read an article, broccoli always appears on the superfoods list, and so does spinach. I've put a few others there, but seaweed. Who's cooked with seaweed other than eating sushi? Anyone use wakame?
Use it on salads and things like that, and then you chop it up really fine.
It's quite nice. It's actually quite nice. There's a lot of, it's high in iodine, really, really good for you too. So when you look at the Japanese diet, the common themes in their diet is soy, seaweed and fish, and they usually come up with some of the superfoods. But I mean, that's something I can help you with in terms of a family-friendly meal with seaweed. Just don't tell it's seaweed and we might eat it.
What about kale, Rebecca? Is that part of the spinach family?
Yeah, it's part of the, kale, and you've got, what else have you got? Spinach, what's the other one? Swiss chard, silver beet, Swiss chard. They're all, part of the leafy greens. Really, really good for you, high in folate. Just have to be careful if you're on warfarin, just to eat moderate amounts. But if you could do more of that, I mean, certainly what I try to do, particularly in the winter, you know, when vegetables and fruits sometimes get a bit boring, you actually might use something different like Swiss chard or get some fennel and try something a bit different. I've put here your red foods. So tomatoes. Who's read a bit about tomatoes and why they're important? Especially cooked, exactly. Which is interesting, isn't it? So if you've got cooked tomatoes, you get more of the antioxidant lycopene, and that's been shown to reduce the risk of prostate cancer. Just what Kathy needs.
Yeah.
A lot of vegetables out there. It's interesting, and it's funny because, you know, it might be just for prostate cancer, but then when you look at other cancers, there's always links to benefiting breast cancer or whatever. I've also put ruby red grapefruit. That's a really nice winter fruit. That quite hard. It's the way you work with it.
You haven't got that on the list of fruits, so I was going to ask you about it.
Good question. So with the fruits, I call it a free fruit.
Right.
It's unless you're on a cardiovascular medication, some medications says do not touch grapefruit, so just be careful. But with grapefruit, it's so low in calories that you have to eat probably 3 or 4 to have the same amount of calories as just one standard piece of fruit like a banana or whatever. So it is a free fruit. I don't normally count it as a serve.
Right.
But very, very good for you.
Rebecca, why is that? My son's not allowed to eat grapefruit with his medication.
Yeah, it's just an interaction. There's something in the grapefruit, I'm not really sure, but there is something in the grapefruit that will interact with the effectiveness of the medication. That's why I cook a lot of foods. It's just to be careful. But I mean, it's not a bad thing because, I mean, when you look at the citrus fruits, there's so many other things that you can have, like tangelos and oranges and things like that. You can see here I've also put blue foods, purple and blue foods. They're potent in terms of high in antioxidants. So who's read a lot about, you know, whenever they do have superfoods, it's always like blueberries. Blueberries.
Yeah.
Really good for you. Yeah. I mean, in summer they're always on special in the supermarket. If you get them for like, I've got about 5 punnets still in my freezer. But sometimes people go, look, I don't eat enough blue foods. I eat red, I eat green, but the blue foods is giving you another type of antioxidant as well. Prunes. Did I say last week that they started eating prunes?
Yes, someone said that.
Is it was Margaret. Really good for you. And the muffin recipe I gave you, I deliberately put the prunes in to put blue food in your diet and put carrots in there to get you some veg in the day. But certainly prunes are really, really good for you, high in soluble fibre, so good for cardiovascular health. But you've also got the other purple foods like beetroot, eggplant and purple cabbage. So sometimes if you're making a homemade coleslaw, use purple cabbage rather than the white one, so you're going to get more antioxidants that way as well. And I've put orange foods, but also tea, green and black tea, both for antioxidants, but also cocoa. Tell me about what you know about cocoa and the benefits of cocoa. Yes, more chocolate.
70%, isn't it?
Yeah,
70%.
yeah. Look, there's research out there that actually helps with blood pressure lowering. But the reason why I don't put chocolate is because everyone goes, oh, Easter, I'm just going to have, from that group here, not blue foods, I'm going to eat more chocolate. I'd say eat chocolate for the enjoyment of it. But yeah, it's certainly 70% or more will give you the antioxidant benefit. But you know, you don't need to. I've had patients come in and say, my cardiologist said to eat chocolate and drink red wine, and I don't like it. A little old lady saying, I hate 70% chocolate, cocoa chocolate. So if you can do it through your fruit and vegetables, great. But with cocoa, you can use pure cocoa as a base for hot chocolate. I think I mentioned it.
Yeah, I made it last night.
Do you like it?
It was beautiful.
Nice, isn't it?
You with the vanilla and the...
Vanilla essence and a splotch of honey, did you put honey?
Yes, and the honey. Yep, that was honey. I had it
Yeah.
last night.
Yeah, anyone else tried the... Very nice. Just
When was that?
Yummy.
When was that spoken about? That sounds great.
Last
Oh.
week.
Yep.
Where were you?
Yeah.
We're not
I might do that one. Sounds-
Takes concentration.
You've got to go watch the video. Yeah. No.
So what is it?
So it's just about a teaspoon. Look, I love really strong food, so usually it's a teaspoon of cocoa. You can get the Burnville cocoa or Dutch cocoa. The pure cocoa, you know when you smell it, it smells like chocolate and you don't have a mouthful.
It doesn't taste like
Yeah, I'm just speaking from experience. You go, oh, I've done it again. But a spoon, but I usually, if you like really rich foods, a big heaped teaspoon, put in about that much of hot water just to melt it. Then you can add a splodge of vanilla essence just to give it a bit more of a taste. And if you want a little bit of yellow box honey is low GI. You don't have to. If you don't want to use honey, you don't have to. Then you fill the rest up with milk or a milk alternative and microwave it or put it on the stove, and it smells and tastes like real chocolate. So that's why I've put it there, because there's a way of, when we're talking about mindful eating, it's a way of enjoying the taste of what you like from chocolate, if it's the cocoa, through that. If you're using dairy or dairy alternative, that's actually also giving you calcium and protein as well. It's a good snack. So I challenge you. Yeah, because the sachets that you buy, there's a lot of junk in them. And so that sort of brings me on to my other point of, on the right-hand side, it's reducing some of the stimulants and non-foods. So that came out as a theme in the video. So what I don't want people to think is, I can't eat any of those foods, but then you got to think, what do I replace it with? That's why I started off with all those superfoods. But the non-foods are things like diet products, too much coffee, energy drinks, alcohol and additives, and too much sugar. So remember we just said this morning that it was a bit extremist in terms of sugar. You can have sugar, but it's the dose that makes the poison. And no one's injecting themselves with sugar like cocaine.
Can I ask you, out of all those things like additives and stuff, which yogurts are the ones that you think are good overall, like GI, all of it?
Yep. I'd say, first of all, the natural one is really good. Some people find the natural is a little tart, so I either say add fruit to it, or another brand of yogurt which is really good is Tamar Valley. Tamar Valley. The problem is with Tamar is there's one that's in a 500 gram pot, and Woolworths up here in IGA don't think stock. I think Coles have it, and it's in 500 gram tub, and it's natural, but it's really creamy. Now it's low fat, but it doesn't taste low fat. They don't put any gelatin in it, they don't put any sugar in it, they don't put any other junk in it, and it's actually quite nice. And if you can mix that with some berries, you get the sweetness of the fruit, and you've got the nice taste from the yogurt.
So is it just a natural one? Or?
It's a natural one. You can get one with fruit pulp on top, and that's actually quite nice too.
I buy mine, and it's Tamar Valley, and it's the fruit, and it says no added sugar in it.
Yeah.
So they have a sugar, they have a 98% fat-free one, and then they have a no added sugar one. So
That's
I
the
like that one, but I don't know if it's...
Yeah, Yeah, no, it's good. You can get a pack of 6, a blue label, and you can get little pots. They're really good, and also Jalma. Jalma is a really good one too.
Because I really like the vanilla Jalma, but I just wonder if it tastes